My God, Adrian Carson joining me when we return. The Gamecocks and the Gators. What's right?
And now for our feature presentation.
He'll be fire on the mountain.
JB and Darren on the JB and Goldwater Show.
Line drive right field, base hit. South Carolina wins the College World Series.
Watson, touchdown! Hunter Renfro.
Got him, and it's all over. Coastal Carolina rules the roost. They win the championship. And South Carolina has won the national championship.
The Citadel baseball team has done it again, but this time the Bulldogs beat one of the top teams in the country. They are giant killers.
Get the ball to Bennett. He does.
Gamecocks are in the Final Four.
Well, I'm going to adjust my hat here. Sorry about that. Greetings and a good rainy Tuesday afternoon, and welcome aboard the JB and Goldwater Show, live, loud, and online, and driven by our friends and yours at Stokes Volkswagen. Find them at stokesvw.com. Find us on the JB and Goldwater app. You can download that into your phone. It's free, and you can watch and listen to our program in its entirety between 12 and 2 o'clock each and every day. And if you miss something, go back and check us out whenever you get a chance. We certainly appreciate that. Make sure you follow us across all social media platforms at JB and Goldwater, individually at Sports Media JB and at Darren Goldwater. Phone number 843-321-8893, 843-321-8893. If you want to send us a text, you can do that. Like if you're not driving in the rain, but if you're pulled off, if you're at lunch, if you're wherever, and you are watching or listening to our program, it's very easy. Just text us. You don't have to be in a chat room or anything like that. But if you are, like on YouTube or Facebook or Twitter, you can send us a message there as well, and Darren will make sure that he gets it up on our screen. On our screen later will be a couple of fine gentlemen who know exactly what they're doing in their profession, and they're both very busy these days. Hale McGranahan with thebigspur.com in Columbia. Obviously, he's been all over recruiting, and we'll talk some of that today, but we've had a lot of recruiting. We'll have more to come this week on our program. We're going to get into some news and notes in the Gamecock football program, some storylines. We're about 75 days from kickoff. So if you want to talk or listen to football, you'll want to be a part of that conversation. And then I know this dude's busy. Darren Heitner, it's been a while since we've spoken with him, with Heitner Legal, one of the great sports law attorneys in the United States. He is all over it, and he's right in the thick of it when it comes to both name, image, and likeness and the SCOTUS ruling that came down yesterday morning. He'll be here at 1:30 today to discuss all of that with us. So, you know, Darren, I was thinking about, okay, generally I don't prep a lot of questions for interviews. I know you don't. We like to kind of shoot from the hip. And then I was thinking about, okay, well, I'm going to try to probably prep a couple of things for Darren. And then I said, well, now wait a second. Why make this very complicated? Just ask the simple questions, right? Because everybody just wants to know the basics. What exactly is going on? What does this mean? When's it going to happen? The who, you know, the who, what, when, where, why, all that type stuff. So we'll get some clarification. That's for sure.
I mean, can't it just be simple? That's been my refrain for the last couple of weeks here. And no, of course not. But he can give a deeper explanation as to why not, and as to what this NIL is probably going to look like, with states able to handle it themselves. And maybe even deeper than that, what does this ruling mean for the future of the NCAA? So there are obvious questions to ask and to explore. And then, just like any other interview, the key to a good interview is listening to the answers, which sounds simple, but it's true. That's the key. And then feeding off those answers to figure out where to go next. But yeah, it's pretty basic right now because we don't know a lot of information. So it's the simple parts of, what does this mean? What's our timeline? What does this do for NIL?
Absolutely. And, again, as we mentioned yesterday, the next 30 to 60, 90 days is going to tell us a lot about the future of college athletics, not just football, not just basketball, but all of it. I mean, it's changing right before our eyes. I haven't been around forever, and neither of you. We've only been on this earth for 35 to 40 years, right? But I'd say in my lifetime, what's going on right now is the biggest change we've ever seen in the sports landscape.
And I had a friend texting me yesterday, and this is not isolated to him. I think there's a very common refrain out there that college sports as we know it are dead. There is a fear that college sports as we know it, they're not just dead, but what they're going to change into is an unwatchable product because money will infiltrate this, not game, the entire landscape. And how will that change things? Will this become, in effect, a minor league system? Will it widen the gap, as I think it will, significantly? The haves and have-nots are about to be significantly farther apart. So how to prevent that gap and how to keep some model of the NCAA while paying players to some degree, however it will be, how do you keep something of the fabric that we know and love continuing moving forward?
Yeah, there are just so many questions out there that certainly we're searching for answers for, and there's a lot of different answers. So hopefully Darren can provide some of those this afternoon. Heitner, that is. Darren Goldwater always provides answers. That's daily between 12 and 2 right here on the JB and Goldwater show. All right, so we'll get to the Braves in a little while as well. Also going to get to a report that kind of came down yesterday. We mentioned it with Gene Sapikoff. We'll talk a little bit more about it as it pertains to the wide range of college football, not just the Pac-12, but the Pac-12 has scheduled some meetings, and they're going to look at what the future of that sport is out west, scheduling, things of that nature. Should they keep divisions in the Pac-12? Would that be good for the league, bad for the league, all those type of things. So we're going to get to some of that in a little while. Are divisions good, though, in other leagues besides the Pac-12? For instance, how do divisions, like in the SEC, does it affect a team like South Carolina? Does it affect Georgia? How does it affect Alabama? I think there's a couple of different answers. And so we'll get to that here in just a little while as well. But we're going to start with the College World Series because we saw two totally different games yesterday. One, a blowout. Stanford sends Arizona packing, the first program eliminated from the 2021 College World Series in Omaha, Nebraska, 14-5, the final score there. Stanford has been playing pretty good baseball coming into the grandest stage of all of them out there at TD Ameritrade. They were pummeled in game one by NC State, who we learned last night is hot. Sometimes that's all it takes. Yeah, you got to be really good. And NC State is talented. Mike Morgan told us that a few weeks ago. But you also need to get hot at the right time of the year, and you probably need some luck sprinkled in there as well. Well, if you're going to beat Jack Leiter, 1-0 sounds good, and they did it last night. NC State, Darren, is 2-0 for the first time ever in Omaha.
I said I didn't think Vanderbilt would go 2-0. I thought it would be Rocker, and he almost took that loss. And now it ends up as NC State knocking him off. It's hard for the favorite to go out to Omaha and win. We've talked about that. NC State becomes the first team in 22 years, 1999, to beat the number one overall seed, that would be Arkansas, and the defending champ in the same NCAA postseason. And in doing so, you've got an ACC team on the precipice of that championship series.
Yeah, I mean, think about this for a second. So the Wolfpack are 2-0. and they don't have to play until what? Friday? Is it Friday?
Yeah, it could be Thursday. Thursday or Friday.
Okay. So they're off though for a few days. You just mentioned it. I mean, no offense to all the programs that are left. And again, if you're in the College World Series, you're really good. But what challenge awaits NC State that is bigger than what they went to Fayetteville and won 2 of 3, and they just beat one of the best two arms in the country in Jack Leiter. And, so I mean, I get it, whatever, you never know. I mean, you just don't know, but they're going to be able to sit there and get rested, stay healthy, and they'll be fresh when they're back out on the diamond. The question is now, and we have a winners bracket game tonight, Virginia, Mississippi State, and I'm pulling for Mississippi State big time with Chris Lamonis and Scott Foxhall. But based on what we've seen NC State do over the last 10 days or so, are they the favorites to win the College World Series?
I wouldn't go that far because they're still not the most talented team out there or the most talented team that's left. They're one of the hottest. There's no question they're one of the hottest, but it only takes a game for that streak, that confidence to, I wouldn't say erode, but to take a hit. So are they the favorite? They're one of them because of how hot they are and because they're 2-0. But let's see who comes out of this game tonight. If Mississippi State comes out of this game tonight, I had put Mississippi State ahead of NC State simply because it's the better overall team. I understand NC State's hotter, but if Mississippi State comes out, I'd put Mississippi State ahead of them. If Virginia comes out, I don't even know where I'd rank the two of them in terms of who I would give better odds to. But clearly 2-0 over anyone coming out of the losers bracket has better odds.
Yeah, I mean, this is remarkable. I mean, we've seen 2-0 teams not win it, obviously. I mean, the one that sticks out the most around here generally always is the same team that's done it twice, and that was against their rival, Clemson, in 2002 and again in 2010. Both times 2-0, both times sent packing by the Gamecocks. So, it's not a shoe-in. We know how it works in Omaha, but we talked to Tony Skull on Friday. He's up there, and he'll be there tonight to watch his best friend Chris Lamonis coach against the Wahoos of Virginia, another hot team, both NC State and Virginia representing the ACC incredibly well right now. But Tony said on Friday, this time of the year, good pitching beats good hitting. That's just the way it goes. Well, I mean, we've seen that the last couple of days. I know that games 1 and 2 on Saturday were a little bit higher scoring, 10-4, 7-6 Vanderbilt over Arizona. But, Virginia shut out Tennessee. I know that Virginia had scored 6 runs. They tacked those on late, so pitching is what gave them a chance to kind of get some momentum late. So they shut out Tennessee 6-0. Then you got that 2-1 Mississippi State over Texas game, brilliantly pitched. We see the 1-0 affair yesterday. If you would have told me that Vanderbilt wasn't going to score a run, I would have literally laughed in your face. I mean, that lineup is just dangerous, top to bottom. There's so many different ways. I'll tell you, you want to know when the tone of that game was set last night, Darren? I'll tell you exactly when it was set. First damn batter of the game. When Enrique Bradfield dropped the most perfect of all perfect bunts down the third base line, and NC State's third baseman, his name has escaped me. He's I think he's from the Czech Republic, actually. He made you don't make those plays in college baseball when you have the fastest player in the sport running down the first base line, and he barehanded it one step off balance and threw a dart to the first baseman, and you knew right then, okay, they're here to play, and they were.
Does this change your perception of the ACC in general this year? And I'll add to it, if Virginia wins tonight, does that change your answer right now?
No, it doesn't. Because I have long thought that Omaha is not necessarily representative of the 60 games that you play to get there, or 60 plus, or whatever, collectively as a whole. I will go to my grave with I think that far and away the SEC was the best league in college baseball. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm not crediting the Atlantic Coast Conference. They deserve tons of credit. I mean, obviously, Notre Dame, Virginia got hot at the right time. NC State, as Mike said a few weeks ago, maybe the most talented team in the league. They've got some top-tier programs there. There were more of them, in the SEC, and there's still 3 of them there. Just so everybody remembers that: Vanderbilt, Tennessee, and Mississippi State. As a whole, no. Does it change maybe my perception of how good the best teams in the league were? Yes, it does.
There was an interesting nugget out there today, just probably ribbing at the SEC fans a little bit. The fact that the 2 SEC teams from one state in Tennessee, the Vols and Vandy, have both been shut out here in Omaha by an ACC team.
Yeah, and the thing is too is, I mean, I thought there was a real chance, I did at least, coming into the tournament, that those two teams could potentially meet in the championship.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Tennessee is certainly good enough to get there. I mean, I was pitching wise, they're not maybe one of the best teams in the field, but they're good enough to get there. Vanderbilt, we know. I mean, if Vanderbilt went 2-0, they were going to be in the national championship series, but they didn't.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, it's really interesting. But no, my perception doesn't change, but that doesn't take anything away from what those 2 teams are doing. I mean, you think about it's actually pretty remarkable, both of their paths thus far in the postseason. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because Virginia loses game 1 to South Carolina, and with their best arm on the mound, Andrew Abbott, and you think, well, they're done. Nope. They go back and they had rain delays, and then they had to stay in Columbia all week and play the Super Regional there. They didn't even get to go home, so they're a whole week away, and they're in a hotel. I know exactly which hotel it was because I stayed there. And then they win that with their backs against the wall again, and then here they are, and then of course NC State, as we mentioned, you go back, Darren, to late in the season when they announced the 20 teams that were in contention to host, right? And we were all kind of going, well, NC State, they might be able to play their way into this. I mean, but they're not one of the 20.
Mm-hmm.
And they lost to Duke 1-0 in the ACC championship, and then they run through the regional. They go to Fayetteville. Nobody. There's literally not a soul on earth who thought they were going to go there and win, and they did.
True, but I'll say this in response to my own question: I don't think it delegitimizes the strength of the SEC this year. I think it certainly does say that the ACC was stronger and deeper than they've been given credit for, and that's along the lines of what Mackenzie just popped in here saying. So results out of conference don't matter as much as results in conference, because the common theme around the SEC and SEC fans, and I hear it all the time, and I'm in the midst of it, and that's fine. I don't think you're wrong that the SEC is the strongest league top to bottom. I think it's pretty darn an irrefutable fact that it was the strongest league top to bottom.
Yeah.
But nobody else was even given credit. Nobody else was even given the thought of, yeah, they could probably compete. We talked about maybe 7 teams from the SEC hosting because they were so strong. We talked about, before those seeds came out, could we even see 8 SEC teams hosting, even though we agreed that probably wouldn't happen because of regional sites. Right. So the SEC was overvalued and overweighed compared to the strengths of other leagues. And this proves this right here. It proves that with the ACC having the success in the postseason that they've had.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I stick with what I believe. I don't think as a whole that this makes the ACC any better than I thought they were all year. I didn't think they were a bad league. Don't get me wrong. The ACC is never a bad league in baseball, ever. And it never will be.
But we've discussed it often that they weren't as strong as they typically are, and there wasn't a great team in there. So it's a better league than we gave it credit for.
I think that the teams at the top were better than at least I'm only speaking for myself than I gave them credit for. I wasn't a big fan of Notre Dame, and then I saw them playing more in the postseason. I had seen them sporadically throughout the year and just didn't think, because I kept seeing them in the top 8 seed category, and I didn't think it was there. Like I was like, I don't know that there's enough. Saw them play in the postseason. Thought, you know what? I didn't give them enough credit. That's on me. I probably should have paid a little bit closer attention to that. Virginia, Saw them in person twice in Columbia a couple of weeks ago. Had seen them here and there throughout the year. There is still nothing eye-popping about Virginia to me. But they're playing great baseball. I mean, they're playing great baseball.
It happened for like 2 months. I mean, it's started midway through the year. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, they struggled to start. NC State, when Mike said 4 weeks ago, somewhere in there, that might be the most talented team in the ACC, and he kind of started paying attention and realized that as well. And I started paying attention, and I saw some of those guys like that shortstop, the Torres kid. I think his name's Jose Torres. That kid's gonna be in the big leagues one day, folks. Pay attention. I started to see some of that, but again, I hadn't personally seen enough of them to think that they would be capable of making this type of run. And I'm not even just speaking for myself. I'll go ahead and speak on behalf of the country here. Name one person out there that thought that anybody was going to go into Fayetteville and beat Arkansas. Nobody thought, especially after they won 21-2 in game one. It was over, right? So, I don't think that just any team in the ACC could have done that at all. I think that NC State is hot. They're talented, and it just kind of all came together at the right time. So I give credit to those teams at the top. To counter that, though, to be fair, should credit be subtracted from, in the SEC at least, for how deep we actually thought it was? Probably a little bit. Yeah, probably a little bit. I contend still that the 4 or 5 teams at the very top are legit. Any of them could win it. There's no question. Especially if they're hot at the right time. Like, you mean to tell me if Vanderbilt and Arkansas, as talented as they are, Tennessee, Mississippi State, Ole Miss, are playing their best baseball also at the right time, they can't win it? Of course they can.
Of course.
So, but if South Carolina got hot at the right time, could they win it? No. They didn't have the talent. Florida, I think they were overrated. They were preseason number 1. Really like Florida. Probably a team that's 10 to 15 range. If they were hot at the right time, could they go win the whole thing? I don't think so. I don't think so. Yeah, you know what I mean? So I think that there's 3 or 4 teams that were kind of in that blue-collar bracket of the SEC right there in the middle that we thought maybe were a little bit better than they were. And I think that I would probably drop that back a notch or 2.
Yeah, and the Gamecocks are a perfect example of the strength of the league as it was viewed and maybe the reality of how deep it actually was. Was the top outstanding? Absolutely. The Gamecocks ended up hosting. Granted, it was a 2 seed, but they were in contention for a 1 seed late. That shows you the idea of the depth of the league. You just pointed it out. If this team got really hot, could they win? They have to be super, super hot because they probably weren't talented enough to do it, offensively in particular. So did we give the league a little bit more strength and credit than it deserved? And a league like the ACC, based on what we're seeing now, not as much credit. I'm not saying flip-flop. I think we're kind of agreement here, but more credit here, a little less credit here.
I think that the top teams in the Atlantic Coast Conference, the top programs, deserve a little bit more credit than they were given, at least from my side. And I certainly think that there's others out there that would probably admit that as well. Because I mean, look, man, we've talked to a lot of folks around here. I mean, I've talked to plenty of coaches over the last month, and NC State was the one team that was like, if they get hot, they can get to Omaha. But I didn't talk to anybody that thought, well, Virginia and NC State have a chance to win the whole thing.
No. You know what's cool about NC State? Link Jarrett's kid is the second baseman. Notre Dame's coach is the second baseman for NC State. So I wonder what he's sporting in the stands, because I promise you he'll be there. At least you'd think. Is he rocking Notre Dame gear? Is he rocking NC State gear? Or is he just neutral? Like, is he rolling in a purple thing like I got today?
Yeah, absolutely. And, well, that's, again, remember Mike Bianco, his son's at LSU. By the way, Mike Bianco will not be taking the LSU job. His name he's going to stay put right there in Oxford. Probably a good move for him. I've lost my train of thought here. Oh, I know what I was going to say. I also think too, so like if you compare the 2 leagues, and I think that this is probably a more realistic comment than if you actually think about it than some might want to believe, but just hear me out. So like when you look at the SEC, outside of LSU and South Carolina and in Florida. I mean, there's so many teams in this league that are literally in Omaha every year. But you saw your typical programs up there. Mississippi State, Vanderbilt, Arkansas. I mean, those three in particular. Tennessee was the one that didn't come out of nowhere, but just a few years ago, they were a bottom feeder in the league.
They're not their typical powerhouse.
No, they haven't been a perennial powerhouse in the league in years. I mean, since they went to Omaha in 05 and 01, and they haven't been back till this year. So, but you at least had enough of the top juice in the league to, okay, because a lot of times we look at the name on the front of the jersey to determine whether the league is any good or not. And then if you looked at the ACC, you didn't see Clemson or North Carolina, Miami, Florida State, for that matter, at the very tip top of the league. You saw Notre Dame. And Notre Dame was kind of the face of the league for a while. Now, Virginia won a national championship in 2015. Okay, and Virginia, in my opinion, is an incredibly, and should be, well-respected program in that conference. When they're really good, they're one of the blue bloods, basically, of college baseball, especially in the ACC. NC State is one of those blue-collar type teams where they're going to be here and there, and then some years they're not going to be really good, and then the next year they're going to be pretty good, but they're not Florida State, they're not Clemson, who you feel like you can always count on to be towards the top of the league. Miami, those type programs. But the face of the league this year is Notre Dame, and so I think because of that name recognition, I think hurt the conference across the country. And then now that we're getting a better look more consistently at the teams that got hot kind of at the right time of the year, we're more towards the top, I think we've all begun to give those guys a little bit more credit than they probably were getting earlier.
Yeah, and particularly in the Southeast, because Notre Dame has been in the past a very strong baseball program, especially if you look and I'll consider them in the Northeast. They're close enough to the Northeast, but outside of the perennial powerhouse areas in college baseball, they've had their flashes. But down here, it's just it's hard to imagine that one of those teams can be as talented as they could be, right? And so down here, the fact that Notre Dame was on top of the ACC and was carrying the flag for the ACC, I think that hurt the league in particular down in this area too.
Yeah, from a perception standpoint, I mean, I would equate it to Missouri. I mean, what if Missouri won the SEC? What would you say? We'd all be like, the SEC kind of had a down year, just based on brand recognition, the name on the front of the jersey, right? I mean, we would look at the SEC. Well, Missouri won it. It probably isn't that good,
right?
But then you actually go back and think about it, or you actually watch them. You go, damn, they're really good. That's not what happened, but Missouri's put out a lot of products, a lot of prospects in the big leagues. A couple guys who quite well played for the Nationals. So, anyways, it's just one of those things. A fun conversation to have. At the end of the day, pitching, the pitching in Omaha is what is. I've just been all over it, man. Watching these pitching performances, I love that at this time of year. I love it. The 10-9s in Omaha are fun to watch and stuff, but it just doesn't feel like baseball to me at the elite level until you see what we started seeing the last couple of days. And I think we're going to see more of it, Darren. I really do. I think tonight, when you pull up the schedule and you see Tennessee and Texas, Virginia and Mississippi State, you better be ready for some big arms out there. I think there's going to be low numbers.
Regardless of level of baseball, championship baseball, if you're anything on the line of a purist, it's got to be a well-pitched game, man. It's got to be a 1-run, 2-run type, low-scoring game with some dominant pitching in there or some escape, when maybe it's not as dominant, but you're stranding 7 guys on through the first 3 innings and nobody can crack through. I mean, that's what you want in high-level baseball situations.
No question. Speaking of high-level situations, Dawn Staley has been in the mix to become the next head coach of the Portland Trailblazers, but that will not happen. Carolina fans can now breathe again. She is not one of the 3 finalists. Becky Hammond, Chauncey Billups, and Mike D'Antoni are the 3 finalists, though, in Portland. Dawn will continue to be the head coach at South Carolina. She did acknowledge she had spoken with the Trailblazers about that opening. She said that, you have to talk. You have to. This was a situation that she absolutely had to have the conversation about, but home is where the heart is. meaning Columbia, South Carolina. Dawn, though, of course, will make Tokyo home before long because she is coaching the 2021 U.S. Women's Olympic Basketball team, which Asia Wilson was named to just yesterday. Of course, they're just coming off of that championship down there in I don't even know where they were now. Costa Rica. I think Costa Rica.
That sounds about right.
Yeah. And Carolina had 4 players in that.
I need to check on the roster. There's also in the Olympics, it's not just men's and women's basketball. There's also men's and women's 3-on-3. I need to check on the roster to see who on Carolina is a part of it, but I do think someone's on the 3. I don't think you can be on both rosters. I do think Carolina has someone on the 3-on-3.
Okay. Yeah, we'll definitely need to look at that. Real quick, I see McKenzie's question here. Do you think the great pitching has helped tremendously by the fact the ballpark is much bigger than any park these college teams play in? There's some truth in that, but not all. That's not an all-in answer. Remember, Texas plays in a desert out in Austin, and so yeah, there's some truth in that. There's probably a few here and there. I mean, you're going to play it a little bit differently when it's much bigger, and there's probably a couple of balls that are landing in mitts that might not in others. In other ballparks, particularly a place like Founders Park, of course, where Virginia literally spent the entire postseason until they got to the middle of America. But also, I give much more credit to the arms, and let's remember this is a little bit more resembles a little bit more of the majority of big league parks. So if you're pitching well in this, you're probably gonna have a pretty decent shot at having a good career at the next level. If you're one of those guys, Leiter, Rocker, Madden, Sims, all these names we've been seeing. But there's some truth certainly in that, and that's the truth every year. I'll also say this, though. We've seen some balls leave the yard in Omaha that have absolutely left the yard. I mean, they have been tattooed, not squeakers, gone. I mean, the ball that was hit out of right field the other night, the kid didn't even move.
Yeah.
I think
they had to make the change because Rosenblatt was like the size of this studio. So they went way bigger as opposed to somewhere where balls could still fly out. By the way, Alicia Gray, who is a Carolina grad, is on the team. It's all pros. There's 4 pros, 2 from UConn, 1 from Washington, and Alicia Gray.
There's 6, I think, or 5. 5 from UConn on the Olympic team.
Oh, I'm talking the 3-on-3.
Oh, no, I know. I'm just saying you add those together.
Oh, I see.
Then UConn has 7?
Shocking.
Wow. That's just unbelievable.
Who would have guessed?
Unbelievable. It is wet outside. Maybe you need something, you kind of want something fulfilling on these dreary days. Like, let's just get a big sandwich and just kind of veg out. Order DB's cheesesteaks for delivery for supper. How's that sound? If you're in the Low Country and you're pretty much anywhere in the area that delivers from West Ashley, why not order a cheesesteak on a dreary, rainy, wet, nasty day like it is here in Charleston? dbscheesesteaks.com. If you have never tried it and don't believe what we say every day, maybe head to the website and check out their menu. Don't forget the boardwalk fries. I always recommend the buffalo chicken cheesesteak. It is some kind of fantastic. dbscheesesteaks.com. All right, we're going to hit a timeout. Hale McGranahan with thebigspur.com. He is up next. We'll get into some Gamecock football. Not necessarily just recruiting. There are storylines for 75 days until kickoff, and we'll get into more of that on the other side of this break on the JB and Goldwater Show, driven by Stokes Volkswagen.
This is Mike Mazzell for Stokes Volkswagen on Ashley Phosphate Road with exciting news. It's springtime and we're playing ball. Most dealerships don't have any inventory, but at Stokes Volkswagen we do. So we're playing ball on every new Volkswagen in stock. Every new Volkswagen available with 0 down. Qualified buyers can sign and drive with interest-free financing for 60 months. Remember, Stokes Volkswagen on Ashley Phosphate Road is the fastest, easiest way to sell your car. You get the most money for your trade. Plus, we'll take any trade in any condition, paid off or not. Is your credit in a slump?
Strike 2.
If you've got $500 down and you make at least $2,000 per month, our lenders can get you approved. So if you want to strike out, that's okay. But if you want to hit a home run and save on a new Volkswagen, come see us today at Stokes Volkswagen on Ashley Phosphate Road or StokesVW.com.
$1,666 per month per $1,000 borrowed for 60 months at 0% APR with 0 down. Plus tax tag. Includes $499.50 administration fee. Subject to VCI credit approval. Expires month end.
Peace and love at Stokes VW.
Wando Power Equipment, the trusted home of Hustler zero-turn residential and commercial mowers. There is nobody more trusted in South Carolina than our friends from Wando Power Equipment. They've been providing elite commercial and residential service for over 30 years. Landscape Services have turned to their selection of Hustler zero-turn mowers like the Raptor. Bigger, stronger, faster, and the most durable Raptor Hustler has ever designed. Located on Daniel Island and online at wandopower.com. Wando Power Equipment, owned by the Price family, the home of Hustler zero-turn mowers, rentals, service, and specializing in family and friendship.
Shrimping season's back. That means local caught shrimp. That's right. Local caught shrimp back on the menu at the Dog and Duck. All 3 locations, Bell Hall, Park West, and Clements Ferry Road, now featuring once again local caught hand-breaded shrimp, plus other daily specials like the Game Day Burger every Wednesday, Rib Night on Friday, rotating taps all the time, and all the TVs you can possibly imagine for whatever you want to watch. The Dog and Duck in Bell Hall, Park West, and on Clements Ferry Road.
What's up, everybody? This is South Carolina singer-songwriter Patrick Davis, and I might live in Nashville, Tennessee now, but guess what? I can always keep up with the news back in South Carolina because I've got the JB and Goldwater Show. Thank you, JB and Darren, for being live, loud, and online.
$12:35 on this Tuesday afternoon. Welcome back to the JB and Goldwater Show, driven by Stokes Volkswagen, StokesVW.com. Darren, JB, and Hale. Hale McGranahan with the BigSpur.com, joining us from Columbia, South Carolina. What's up, my friend?
Not a whole lot. How we doing? We're trying to stay above water up here too in the Midlands. So I can feel y'all's pain down there.
What's the weather report up there? Is it a downpour?
We had some steady rain in the early morning hours, and here at 12:30, 25 till the hour, top of the hour. I don't know. I can't do math. It's fairly dry as far as stuff coming from the sky, but still pretty gray and crappy looking.
You got a percentage of cloud cover or a percentage of sun or anything?
We are pushing 100 when it comes to the cloud cover.
Yeah.
I'm sure the sun's still out there somewhere.
What's the hourly forecast look like?
Optimistic.
Rain.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. There you
go. Optimistic. I like it. All right. Real quick, want to push this out from South Carolina. I guess this was actually reported first by maybe John Rothstein earlier. But the Gamecocks and Army have scheduled a matchup this year in basketball. Have no fear, folks. They don't run the triple option in on the hardwood. So the Black Knights will be coming to Colonial Life Arena. Hell, thank God that the Black Knights aren't coming to Williams-Brice Stadium. We did that whole triple option. I think I saw Taylor Edwards tweet earlier saying something like he was about to call Coach Tanner and give him an earful or something. I don't know that there's a many, if any, maybe not even one South Carolina fan out there that would ever want to see the Citadel, Wofford, Navy, Army walk through those doors again, right?
Maybe Bob Caslin. He might be the only one.
Yeah, but he doesn't count anymore. He's gone.
It's true.
He might be a fan still, though.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah, that's true. He could be. So let me ask you an interesting question, kind of outside the football program, but the Pac-12 yesterday, there's a report in the Mercury News, which is the San Jose area, that the Pac-12 will be meeting in the coming weeks just about maybe what the future of the league looks like. What will they do about scheduling? The Pac-12 does play 9 league games. The SEC only plays 8. They'll also talk about divisions. I think one of the fears for the Pac-12 is because of what it looks like, at least the structure of the new playoff is going to be 12 teams, the highest 6 conference champions, we'll get an automatic bid. That doesn't mean Power 5. It just means highest 6, as we all know. So the Pac-12 wants to make sure that there's not some 8-4 team from the other division that upsets an 11-1 type program in the other division and a Pac-12 championship, and then they don't automatically qualify and yada, yada, yada. But specific to divisions and specific to South Carolina, Do you think if the SEC did not have the East and the West, it was just 1 through 14, would that benefit the Gamecocks more so than playing in the divisional system as they do now?
Probably not, because that would mean that you'd have to play some of those West teams that you don't have to play all that often, probably a little more often, if you're not guaranteed some of those games against like Vanderbilt and Kentucky and, you know, whoever else in the East that you feel like you should win or be competitive more often than not. I mean, Alabama and LSU, and you already got to play Texas A&M every year. That's pretty tough. I don't know. It just seems to me that having to play some of those guys a little more regularly might be tough. But you know what? The schedule as it's already composed is pretty dang difficult. So
yeah,
I don't know. I think you could probably make a case one way or the other as it relates to that question. But from just like a neutral observer standpoint, I think it would be fun to kind of change things up and I guess and shuffle up and redeal and kind of see what this thing looks like.
I mean, I think because there's two sides to the coin here, right? Because I'm with you. I mean, from a fan standpoint, you'd like to see your football program, especially with the setup that it is in the Southeastern Conference, you'd like to see different faces on the schedule. You know, I mean, going to this sounds ludicrous to say, and I get it, but Carolina hasn't been to Tuscaloosa, Alabama since 2009. I mean, it's 2021, folks. I think they're going back in 2024. And, you know, from a fan standpoint, you're like, you know, I'd like to maybe be able to go watch my team play because I'm a big road trip guy. I love the road trips. I think that, you know, the passion and the, you know, the fandom, all the neat things you see, the traditions. I love that. But from the football side, you're like, yeah, I mean, you know, don't really want to go to Tuscaloosa more often than we need to. So I guess there's a couple of different sides of the argument, but you know, I think you bring up an interesting point there. I mean, right now, Carolina's guaranteed every year, even though they haven't beaten them much over the last 7 years, but Kentucky's on it. And then you got Vanderbilt, Missouri, and those are three programs Gamecocks feel like they should absolutely always be in front of.
Yeah, for sure. So, you know, you want to swap those out for a year that you get LSU and Auburn on the schedule. I mean, I guess they kind of done that last year, and we saw how that worked out, even when they still had Kentucky, Vanderbilt, and Missouri on the schedule. So it's definitely debatable, but again, I think it's kind of fun to think about the future of the game, and you know, that's one thing about football that I think is something that shouldn't be lost on folks is that it develops, it changes throughout the years. I mean, go back in history and you can see very tangibly how the game has changed and evolved, and I think this is probably a natural progression for college football, or heck, maybe even the NFL in some cases.
Yeah,
to get away from the current format and make things different to keep people interested. And I think the biggest thing, I would imagine the biggest reason why it's starting to look like this with the 12-team playoff and all that, and I'm sure folks have written about and talked about it, is just that guys opting out of bowl games. There are important bowl games that the guys don't want to play in anymore because, quote unquote, they don't mean anything. And I think this 12-team deal is a great way to make a bunch more games meaningful, and you know, try to get away from where things are right now and continuing to trend.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, and games will be more meaningful across the sport just in general in November. I mean, you might have, I don't know, what do y'all think, 20, 25 teams that are truly playing for a spot in the college football playoff when you turn the calendar. I'm talking about when you get it. Remember, there's still 4 weeks left or so of the season and then a conference championship game. But I mean, I don't see a scenario where if you're in the top 25 on November the 1st, how you would be considered out of it, right?
Yeah, I think you could sort of parallel that to Major League Baseball and what they've done with those extra wild card spots and creating more opportunities for people to play in the postseason, and that sort of carries over to the end of the regular season when those spots are still on the line. So yeah, it's one of those situations where with college football, it's always been, you know, if you lose a game early on, you might be out of it. Depends on who you are, but you might just go ahead and see your season come to an end as far as competing for the ultimate championship.
Yeah.
But more spots and more opportunities means, you know what, you can lose one early on, and heck, you could probably even lose one late too, and you still might have a shot.
I'll go back and I'll find this. I'll throw it up on our Twitter handle here. I'll retweet it. David Hale of ESPN had a great thread maybe last week about this. And JB, to your point, yeah, as we get deep in the season, the top 20, 25 in that range, that's about the teams that would either be in the mix for a conference championship or a 2-loss at large from a powerful Power 5 conference. That's about the range of teams that you're looking at. He broke it down going back over about a decade worth of just analyzing teams' win-loss records and who could potentially be in the mix for a 12-team playoff under this current format. And it's fascinating stuff. I'll go back through his timeline and throw that up here.
Yeah, I'd like to see that. I mean, because I think that matters. I mean, I don't want to discredit bowl games. I've been to a ton of them, and I love them. But I do think with kind of where things have gone in not just this sport but all sports, people focus on who's got a chance to win everything, right? And outside of individual fan bases. And I think if you're South Carolina, Hale, and you turn the calendar, I mean, I'm not predicting this, so nobody get me wrong here, but you let's say you get through those first 8 games this year and you're 6-2. Yeah, I get it. November, Missouri, Auburn, Clemson lie ahead in November. That's a gauntlet. I hear you. I know it. But if you're 6-2, and let's say the playoff system was in play this year, and you're a Gamecock fan, you're not just going, well, gosh, we might have a chance to get to the Capital One Bowl this year. You're basically going, if something great happens here in November, we have a shot to maybe crack the playoff. I mean, I think that really matters. I mean, insert team name wherever you want to. I'm just saying Carolinas, we're talking to you.
Yeah, and I think that's why it makes a lot of sense and why it's heading this way. And there's a lot of money out there to be made, and on the other side of that, there's a lot of money out there to be lost when it comes to less eyeballs on TV sets or streaming platforms or whatever. And the folks who are making these decisions, as much crap as we talk about them for some of the stuff that they do, they're still kind of smart folks when it comes to figuring out the best way to make a lot of money. So I'm all about expanding this playoff, and yeah, the more the merrier. Can't repeat that cliche enough.
Hale McGranahan with the Big Spur.com, 12:45 on this Tuesday afternoon. Hey, let's talk about the QB room at Carolina. Obviously, there's been a lot of conversation about this over the last few months. They went through spring practice. Luke Doty, the clear guy, we all know that. But I know you poke around when you can from time to time. They're all on campus. They're all working out. They're all out there throwing and things like that. When you look at it from a broad perspective and you say, okay, well, Luke Doty has what, 2 starts under his belt or something like that. You got a kid from St. Francis who's never played Power 5 football. You got a kid who's never played college football, and Colton Gauthier. It doesn't look good. But from what I understand, that's not the worst thing in the world. What are you hearing about what this thing, when they open up camp in the fall, in August, or getting closer to the fall, when they open up camp, what are you hearing about this group?
Yeah, I think clearly Luke Doty was the guy in the spring, and the summer was to be, and it always is, no matter the team or position or level. Summer is the most important time of the year, a lot of folks will say, in terms of shaping how the competition will play out in the fall or in August during the preseason. And yeah, I think it's going to be Luke Doty out there on day one, probably taking all the snaps again, because that's how it played out in the spring. And it's really up to Jason Brown or Colton Gauthier, or heck, even Connor Jordan to really break through that ceiling and challenge him, truly challenge Luke as the number one guy. And I think the biggest thing that was probably holding back Jason Brown from doing that in the spring was, yeah, he showed up late. I mean, I think he and EJ Jenkins didn't get down to Columbia until gosh, I can't even remember now, but it was about midway through the semester, maybe February or March, or I guess it would have been March, early March. And you know what? They get going to practice, and they're about to go to practice, and Jason Brown can't practice because he can't be around the team or whatever, and that sort of sets him back a little bit. And never mind the fact that he hadn't played in an actual football game since 2019. And JC says it all the time, and a lot of other people say it too. But you get better at playing football by playing football, and he hadn't been able to play football really at all these last couple of years. And I mean, they did practice some at St. Francis and last fall, but from what he told me it was barely that. I mean, they would break up in the offense, go off to themselves, and defense go off to themselves, and did very little against each other. So he was certainly behind that way, and had some ground to make up for sure. And I think we saw a glimpse of what he's got, and that he's got the tools and the skill set to be able to challenge. It's just a matter of being able to, I guess, put it all together and be consistent with it all, and really give himself a shot to win that job. And we'll see how that plays out. Obviously, once they get rolling in August. But I think it'll probably, if I had to handicap right now, I think it's probably safe to say that Luke Doty will enter the month and exit the month as QB1 for South Carolina, and how it plays out after that, we'll see. But I think it's pretty safe to say that Luke's going to be the guy when Eastern Illinois rolls into town in September.
Yeah, and look, all the folks that I talk to are comfortable with that. Hale, I know that Luke has things he needs to work on in his game, but as you just mentioned, you get better by playing. Yeah, he's going to be a work in progress throughout the whole year. I mean, he's going to can hopefully continue to get better, but seemingly the staff is comfortable at this point in time with, hey, if we have to throw Luke Doty out there in game one, we feel pretty good about it for a bunch of reasons, regardless of what the message board folks say. Let me ask you this, though. All right, so Marshawn Lloyd hasn't played a snap at South Carolina. We all know he's talented. We get that. We know it's coming. Kevin Harris has played a bunch of snaps, one of the best running backs in the country. We also understand, Beamer basically admitted as much talking to Mike Morgan and JC on their podcast a couple of weeks ago that, in that offensive room, it's more about finding the matchups and just finding guys that can play regardless of what it says on the roster. You might have 13 guys that it says WR next to them, but if 3 of those guys aren't the best wide receivers and it happens to be 3 tight ends, and those are the guys that are going to play. And they're going to figure out the best matchups and this, that, and the other. But in saying all that, that's where all the focus has been. Oh, my God, there's not enough wide receivers. Oh, my gosh, we don't have an experienced quarterback. What about the running backs? Like, how much pressure is on them, and do they realize that pressure is there?
I don't think if they do realize, I don't think they care. I mean, Kevin Harris just goes out and plays and does what he does. He's very low-key about it all, and Marshawn Lloyd is, for all the attention he's gotten over the course of his high school career and early college days, he's sort of cut from the same cloth. And Zaquandre White is the old man in the group. I mean, he's been to Florida State and gone to JUCO and come to South Carolina, and I think he's a little different personality-wise from those two guys, and that he's a really outgoing and gregarious guy, but I don't think he tends to get too caught up again with all that stuff on the outside. For him, it's just about what's around him and what matters, and that's the team. And so I don't think those guys could give two craps about any of that type of pressure. And in some ways, they're probably like, all right, cool. I mean, we're good. We know we can play. So sure, if you want to say there's pressure on us, fine.
Yeah.
And that's great. I mean, those guys are all 3 really talented players. And, I've said for a while now with those first 2 games at Eastern Illinois and East Carolina, I mean, if South Carolina wants to run the ball 40, 50 times in each game,
do it.
Do it. By all means, do it. And that the more the merrier for those guys. Give them all the carries. Throw some screens to them. Maybe they can actually execute a screen with Marcus Satterfield. We'll see.
Yeah.
But it's
got to catch
one
it.
of the things where, to answer your question, JB, it probably doesn't faze them in the least bit.
How good do you think this running back room is? Hell, I look, my wild card for the year, I know people talk about Jaheim Bell. They should. He's a talented kid, really talented kid. EJ Jenkins, certainly a kid folks are paying attention to. I think that Zaquandre White is the wild card to the whole deal. If he can hold on to the football, because he had the whoopsies last year with that, no doubt. But if he can hold on to the football, this kid is as athletic and talented, really, as any of them. How good is this running back room?
It's as good as it's been in a long time around here, I believe. I mean, Kevin Harris was the first running back to rush for 1,000 yards at South Carolina in like 8 years or whatever it was when Mike Davis did it. I think it was in 2013.
Yep.
Way back then.
Yeah.
And he did it in 10 games, which is crazy. And
all SEC.
And, I think some people might make the argument that some of those stats were a bit hollow, and I think that's valid in some ways. But again, 10 games, 1,000 yards. That's more than 1,000 yards. That's pretty impressive. Then Marshawn Lloyd with all the skill that he's got and was on display during his career at DeMatha, and all the stuff people were talking about with him coming into preseason camp, a year ago, like 12 months ago, people were convinced he was going to be the starting running back. And that's not just people on the message board or talking on the radio or whatever. I think there was a real feel over in that ops building that he was going to end up being the guy. And, that narrative changed pretty quickly when he got hurt. And then the coaches are talking about it being a backfield by committee. Like there was no running back by committee talk until Marshawn Lloyd got hurt. It just so happened that Kevin Harris kind of took over and ran away with it. No pun intended. And of course, like you mentioned earlier with Z White having some fumble issues and holding on to the ball, maybe that sort of sped up that process, but they're good, man. They are really good. And you mentioned Jaheim Bell, and think back to what he did in the spring game. Frankly, I'm a little surprised that they showed him off like that as much as they did, but I guess they probably looked at it like, well, we've got some other areas that we're going to have to use him during the season. So he's probably not going to be getting all that many carries ahead of Marshawn and Kevin and Zaquandre. But they got some pieces, man. Backfield, tight end group, maybe a receiver or two. They got some pieces.
I don't know that they meant to show him off like that. I think that just happened. I think they needed a running back, and they knew that he could do it, so they put him in there, and he was like, well, the hell with it. I get a chance here, so I'm going to go show everybody that I'm pretty good at really everything I do out here. And I do you almost wonder whether that's – I mean, I know they said that it didn't. I guess we probably should have asked Shane this, but, like, don't you almost wonder whether it surprised them? Like, they got back in the locker room after the spring game. We're like, look, I know we were just kind of honestly toying around out here today. We weren't really working on anything or doing anything of significance, but did we just find some diamond in the rough we didn't know about, and Jaheim Bell just toting the rock around like you did?
Definitely was not a surprise. I had heard from some folks during the spring that Jaheim Bell was quickly asserting himself as a potential Swiss Army knife or, all around playmaker, athlete, whatever label you want to put on him. But it was apparent that he was going to be a guy who was going to be doing some stuff, a lot of different things. And I guess the surprise for me was that they allowed him to do some of those things. I mean, he's lining up and running back and playing fullback and pushing and doing all kinds of other stuff. I guess the interesting thing about that is they didn't have EJ Jenkins out there with him on the field at the same time. There was not a single play where they were both on the field. So I think that you can kind of take that and say, well, it's probably hard to imagine that being the case when the season starts. I think there's some Marcus Satterfield's got some tricks up his sleeve with him and with those two guys and Nick Muse and Luke Doty and whoever else they can get on the field to stay at 11 guys.
Oh, they need 13. They should play 13 guys.
13? Okay. Well, I mean, that's what it takes to beat some of these guys on their schedules, and
that's what I'm saying.
We need to do it.
You should play 13. You don't have to worry about it. Yeah, I mean, like I continue to find that these conversations so interesting. I mean, I poke around from time to time myself with some of the folks in that building, and just to be, I know we haven't talked literally any defense today, but we will. Have no fear. We're 75 days from football. There's plenty of it coming. But I mean, just when you poke around and I can't remember the last time that we literally knew like nothing. You know what I mean? Like when someone asks, well, what type of offense is this going to be? Hell, I don't know. They don't know. I mean, nobody knows. Like they're literally just piecing everything together.
Yeah, that's sort of the fun part about it too. And I guess slight advantage. Yeah, I guess maybe not fun if you're trying to predict things, but that's part of the intrigue with getting a guy like Marcus Satterfield, who frankly I didn't know who he was before we heard that he was a candidate here, and not a lot of people know a whole lot about him. He's been flying under the radar, at least the SEC football radar, and it's I think it's fun to kind of imagine what this thing could look like.
Yeah, I think it's going to be pretty interesting over the next 2 to 3 months to figure out what type of product they're going to put out there. Hey, we'll let you run on that note, my friend. TheBigSpur.com is where you can go to get all of your information as we head towards football season. But right now it is hot and heavy with recruiting, prospects in and out daily up there on campus. And as J.C. Sherbert says, Hale McGranahan has done a hell of a job in covering all of this. We certainly appreciate it, my friend. We'll talk to you soon. Stay dry.
Thanks, fellas. Appreciate y'all having me back.
See you, man.
Sir. Always. Hale McGranahan with TheBigSpur.com. Hour 1 in the books. Time for a timeout. Remember, Darren Heitner at 1:30 today on all this on the SCOTUS situation from yesterday. We'll talk some NIL with him as well. We're going to get into some Major League Baseball when we return. So another fun hour right here on the JB and Goldwater Show, driven by Stokes Volkswagen.
Mike Morgan here for Gamecock Traditions. Baseball is going strong. You'll want to look sharp when you cheer on your Gamecocks. Under Armour, New Era, sideline hats, all with interlocking SC Baseball logo. 18 styles of $10 tees exclusively at Gamecock Traditions. Get on that email list by going to the bottom of the page, enter your email, and always be the first to know about new items as they arrive. You can also add a little Gamecock flair with house signs, garden flags, interior and yard decorations, only at one place, Gamecock Traditions.
At Patriots Point Naval and Maritime Museum, families walk in the footsteps of our nation's heroes, the brave ones who risked their lives to defend our way of life. Home to the aircraft carrier USS Yorktown, USS Laffey, and the USS Clamagore, there's more than 1 million square feet of exhibit space to roam. White Glove certified, we have several new health safety measures in place to enhance the visitor experience. Come for the day and leave feeling inspired. One of the most impressive museums in the country, located right here in Mount Pleasant. Visit patriotspoint.org for more. We'll see you soon.
Bourbon and whiskey drinkers of Charleston. Paddock and Whiskey on James Island and the Terrace Shopping Center on Maybank is your home for the finest and rarest bourbon and whiskey drinks in the Lowcountry. This is where I hang out. Go meet my friends Reed and Chris and try one of their exclusive barrel pick bourbons. They have the largest private barrel collection in the state, and let their knowledgeable staff recommend your next pour. PaddockandWhiskey.com. Let not your heart be troubled. Paddock and Whiskey is here for your next double. We're all friends around here. Paddock and Whiskey, proud partners of the JB and Goldwater Show.
This is Scott Glaze, head golf professional at the Links at Stono Ferry, located on the outskirts of Charleston, South Carolina. I'm inviting you to tee it up on one of the most scenic and challenging courses in the Lowcountry. Our back nine is highlighted with 3 holes that border the Intercoastal Waterway. Visit StonoFerryGolf.com to book tee times and discover all that Stono Ferry has to offer. The Links at Stono Ferry is a former South Carolina Golf Course of the Year and is also home to the College of Charleston men's and women's golf teams. Come see us. We would love to have you. StonoFerryGolf.com.
Hi, I'm Chris Half, Public Information Officer at the Patriots Point Naval and Maritime Museum. We're home of the mighty USS Yorktown, USS Laffey, Clamagore, and Vietnam experience. And we're a proud partner of the JB and Goldwater Show. We invite you and your family to come see us and enjoy a day on Charleston Harbor. Visit patriotspoint.org for more information. And now, it is my honor to present the national anthem.
JB Goldwater Show. Live, loud, and online.
All right, final hour on this Tuesday afternoon. Dreary and rainy Tuesday afternoon it is. Welcome back to the JB and Goldwater Show, driven by Stokes Volkswagen. Darren and JB. 843-321-8893 is our text line or our phone number. It's both. It's actually the same thing. You can send us a message or give us a shout. You can always pop something into wherever you're watching, if you are watching or listening. If you're on, maybe you're just going right through the Podbean app. Some people actually do that. Or if you're going through our app, the JB and Goldwater app, if you're on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, wherever, send us a note, pop it in. We'll make it a part of our program, just like Darren Heitner will be at 1:30, and just like Hale McGranahan just was with the BigSpur.com. We'll get to some baseball here in just a little bit as well. I kind of want to go back, though, to something that we first started talking to Hale about, and that was, whether the Pac-12 report that came out yesterday about some of their meetings coming up, eliminating divisions and things like that. I think that, and I asked him, would it be beneficial for South Carolina if there weren't divisions in the SEC? Yeah, how do you define beneficial? Like, would it be
easier?
Yeah, like, would it be beneficial? Yeah, as far as getting into the SEC championship game, I think that answer is no. Because if you don't have divisions, you just take the top two teams, and if you do have divisions, you're only competing against 6 other teams to get there. But I also think that like conferences, Darren, here's what I'm getting at. They're probably all going to start looking at these type things once it becomes more concrete that the playoff is going to 12 teams. Because I think there's just one question that these conferences will need to ask themselves. How do we get as many teams as possible into the college football playoff?
Mm-hmm.
How do we do that? Because that's more money for the league. It's more everything, more exposure, more money, more everything. So if they're going to 12, how do we get as many teams as possible into that 12? They're all going to have the same conversation. Some leagues are going to be like, well, maybe we don't need divisions. Some are going to think they do need divisions. Some are going to think the scheduling is going to need to be a little bit different. I mean, it's all going to be discussed. I'll be interested to see where this goes.
The answer, and really I think the question, is different for a lot of the different conferences. If you're a Power 5 conference, I'll even trim that down a little bit. If you're the SEC, if you're the Big 12, and if you're the Big 10, based on the last few years, the conversation is, how can we get as many teams as possible in? Mm-hmm. If you're the ACC, if you're the Pac-12, it's how do we make sure that our conference champ does get in and is seated appropriately. Let's say Clemson is 11-1 and loses, right? Then what happens? So I think the question and then the answers are different. And the question for the team, does it benefit, say, South Carolina if the SEC does away with divisions? No, it does not. Does it benefit the league? Maybe it does. So the questions are different depending on who you're asking those questions to. And for the Pac-12 in particular, they're worried that their conference champ wouldn't be among the top 6 conference champs, which is a tough look for a Power 5 conference, but it is one of their concerns and one of the things moving forward. By the way, as we're talking about this, the proposal has been voted on to move forward. So what that means now is the 12-team proposal we've been talking about now just goes to its next step of discussion. It's not like the timetable speeds up, but today was another expected next step.
Which means that you're gonna see a 12-team playoff is basically what it means.
Probably. And the question is when. Greg Sankey was quoted by Heather Dinich just a couple moments ago of ESPN saying, he's not willing to say that the 12-team playoff will occur, or let's put it this way, a change in the playoff system would occur before the current contract runs out. But that's also a pretty common theme that we've heard, that it likely would have the change before this current contract runs out.
Okay. And the contract runs through the 2025 playoff. So the 2025 regular season and then the playoff, which would be played, around New Year's, and that's when so if anything, 2023 at the earliest, 2024 maybe a little bit more likely. 2025 probably certainly doable if they end it by a year, if they end the contract by a year. Because as you pointed out before, ESPN probably wants to go ahead and get this moving. Because if they are outside of the negotiating window, then they're going to be negotiating against others instead of against themselves.
Right. Their exclusivity runs out if this window runs out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, kind of back to the point, it's like, so teams, like if it doesn't matter who you are, team A, team D, it doesn't matter. Just focus on yourself. Win. That's all that matters is whether you're any good or not. If you're not any good, none of this crap matters. But the league, their worry is, or their concern is, what is the best setup for us to get as many teams as possible into a playoff format? That's the league concern. And, obviously the more teams that you have in contention, the more teams you're going to get in there. And so you want what's best for all of the programs. Like, what you don't want is a league to have a divisional format or a non-divisional format or a scheduling system that greatly affects 3 or 4 teams in a positive way and negatively affects 3 or 4 teams, maybe the bottom 3 or 4 teams in your league. Yeah, you have that blue collar group there in the middle that they're going to play their way in and out year in and year out, but you don't want to have a system or a formula that negatively affects anybody. Like, you want to make sure that you have as many teams every year that can possibly be in the mix. I know some might think contrary to that, because if you keep out like the SEC, here's what I'm getting at. If you keep Alabama, LSU, Georgia, Florida, Texas A&M, Auburn, if you keep those teams elite, you'll always have 3 or 4 teams in the mix, right? Right and wrong. The sport is changing. I mean, with the transfer portal, with name, image, and likeness, like, the landscape is going to change. So if from a league standpoint, the best thing you can do is make sure that whatever setup you have allows everybody to, I mean, obviously they have to take care of their own deal. They got to be good, but like, make sure that the teams that can contend every year somehow being screwed out of this thing because of a horrible scheduling philosophy or something like that, if that makes sense.
It takes forward thinking right now, and it takes forward thinking past the point of real knowledge right now, because if you're going to make a change now, if you make scheduling tweaks and divisional tweaks, it's easy to go back and forth on that. You can always say, well, sorry, next year we're going back to divisions, or vice versa. But any type of change a league makes right now, I would say you can't make one right now. You have to wait at least a little bit longer.
Oh, yeah.
To see the landscape of what this ruling, the Supreme Court does, NIL, how that thing takes shape, how the playoffs are going to take shape. Because if you make a judgment call now on trying to figure out what's best for your league or your team in, I was going to say 10 years, say 3 or 5 years, it's a tough call to make right now, because there are too many unknowns looking down the road to know what is best and what could potentially hurt you and move you backwards.
Absolutely. I mean, and we've centered this more around the SEC, but let's talk about 2 leagues that are probably need to be discussed more. Like the SEC, I think, has proven that every year they have a handful of teams they're either going to be in there, or they're at least going to have 1 or 2 in there, and they'll be knocking on the door with 3 and 4. How about like the ACC? Like, they got to find a way. Notre Dame's not a member of the ACC. Okay. So it's still Clemson and everybody else. Like Miami, North Carolina last year had good years. North Carolina appears to be headed in the right direction. Will that stick? I don't know. You don't ever know with Miami. I mean, there's no consistency in the ACC. There's none. In the SEC, pretty consistent. Bama's going to be there every year. Georgia's going to be there every year. Florida might be within a game or so, or maybe 2 every year. Same thing. I know last year was kind of strange for LSU, but same thing with LSU. You can always probably, for the most part, count on the fact that Auburn's going to somehow be in the conversation. I mean, they're always going to have a group there. The ACC doesn't have a group. They have Clemson. And it's a damn good Clemson, too. But, like, how does the ACC strengthen 2, 3, 4, and 5? You know, like last year when they added Notre Dame, they cut out the divisions, right? So they just went straight to the 15 team. Was that what's best for the league? I don't know. I'd be interested to see what they learned from that. But, like, they got to figure that out. And then the other one I'll throw at you, Darren, you can take these however you want to.
Mm-hmm.
The Big 12 has 10 teams, all right? And we all know that when you think about the Big 12, what you first think about is Oklahoma and Texas, okay? But Iowa State, I think we should probably start focusing on the fact that Iowa State's probably going to be on the dance floor as long as Matt Campbell's hanging around.
As long as he's there, yeah.
You know, I don't know that, you know, if he leaves that they're going to continue to be, but as long as he's there, they'll be on the dance floor. You know, Oklahoma State, they've kind of always kind of been in the mix, but they have 10 teams. Could they add? And they should, I think, 11, 12 teams. And what would strengthen it? Like, would Central Florida be a good fit in the Big 12? I mean, Gene Sapkoff said it yesterday. There might be some leagues out there they're going to look to add if they go to a 12-team playoff. Big 12 seemingly is perfect.
I think not just the 12-team playoff, but again, the landscape of the NCAA as we know it. I think you've already started to see some articles and opinion pieces and maybe a source or two, some stuff start trickling out, referencing again, maybe we're not done with conference affiliation and changing of affiliation. I think as this whole landscape changes, I think we're going to see a dramatic shift. At least I think it's more likely than not that there's a dramatic shift in the conferences because, like I said before, the gap will get wider. It will get much wider with the ability to pay however it's going to be, pay players and name, image, and likeness. The power programs, the major towns, the major cities, the busier and the bigger ones that are the Power 5 programs, they'll separate themselves from the group of 5 and everyone else. Then what does it look like? And do some of the Power 5 teams, can they not hang in, say, Utah? And do they drop down? I don't know. I'm just throwing Utah out there. I think the landscape will change so dramatically that then you could start trying to figure out what's best for each league. For the ACC, it is much better for the league to not have divisions because if Clemson loses to an 8-4 team, that's not good in the championship game. Same thing for the Pac-12. I put those two in a league by themselves right there. It's guaranteed not good for divisionals. Otherwise, I want to see how this landscape changes. I want to see just how far that gap widens between the have and the have-nots.
Do you think that it could change just for football? Like there would be, you do?
I do.
Schools that just affiliate themselves purely from a football standpoint?
Yes, but it's so hard to tell because it's hard to understand. And this is why it's great that we have Darren Heitner coming up here in a couple of minutes. It's hard to know exactly what this ruling yesterday means and what we know it's the beginning of something. What's it the beginning of? What's the end game? Can we even guesstimate the end game? How much are these kids going to eventually be able to be compensated? If it's not just going to be academics, will this get bigger than just academics? Mm-hmm. And if that's the case, then yeah, I think there's going to be, particularly in the big sports, the money-making sports, there is going to be a separation. And you could see something different, like here's the football league. You see it in some lower leagues anyway, right? Where, say, women's lacrosse, the SoCon just dropped. So there's some SoCon schools that play women's lacrosse in other leagues. You could see that from a football landscape and then an everything else landscape.
Yeah, I agree, I think. I mean, I haven't thought enough about it. It's just more, we're all, like you said, kind of spinning our wheels based on the information that we're getting. But let's also remember, I mean, I think Hale McGranahan actually made a really good point a little while ago. We can pick apart everything we hear all we want to publicly about NIL and, the Supreme Court ruling on the Alston case and, who's this, that, and the, whatever. We can pick it apart however we want to pick it apart.
Mm-hmm.
These guys are pretty smart and they know how to make money. And that's at the end of the day, Jay Bills has been screaming it from the rooftops forever. I don't agree with everything he says, but he's not wrong when he says that it's all money and they're always going to find a way to make money. And these people who rule college sports know, even if they don't know, they know what's coming. You know what I mean? Like, we know, and we need to be prepared for it. So what ways can we maybe change some of what has been standard or what has been just kind of the way of life to better ourselves from a financial standpoint, A, to prepare for it, and B, to continue to capitalize on it so we don't get caught behind the 8 ball somewhere?
Yeah, I'm not like an end of the world type guy for most everything. So I understand where some folks are coming, that this signals the end of the world for the NCAA and what could potentially be the downfall of everything. I'm more along the lines of where you're coming in here. We need to figure out some balance that can be struck so that while things will change and they will look and feel and act dramatically different than what they are, how can you keep the sanctity is probably the wrong word, but the overall sense of collegiate athletics, the passion that you have for a college or a league, how can you keep some of those things intact while the general framework is thrown completely out of whack?
I don't have those answers,
No,
but that is so important because like you're a college guy. I know you're more of a pro guy than I certainly am. You're both, which I'd like to think that Penn State people are very similar to SEC, ACC type folks. Just the passion for school.
Oh yeah,
for a bunch of reasons. And there's other, plenty of places like that around the country. But one of the things that is always why I love college so much, and I think many of us have, is it's something that we've all experienced. College, first of all, or not all, but many of us have. We haven't all experienced the pros. It's something we feel like we're kind of a part of. We donate money basically, and that helps fund scholarships, and you have all these traditions. I mean, there are so many things that started not from money. Pro sports started with money, and that's not where college really started. And so it's kind of been ingrained in us, but now money is such a major part of it that I agree with you. Like, you have to find a way to keep the fabric in place, because if you don't, and here's the trick with all the college sports too. And these administrators know it, and I get it. The very large majority of money these days comes from media contracts. It comes from TV and all those type things. I understand that. But if you lose your fan base, you don't have it. It's gone. It's gone forever, and you're not going to get it back. But that's not the case necessarily with pro sports. So, I mean, how many people do you know that move to Atlanta and all of a sudden they become Falcons fans? That's not the way it works in college. Like, I wouldn't move to Indiana and say, well, I'm a Notre Dame fan. That doesn't happen. So like, when you lose that, you've lost it, and they can't allow that to happen. So they have to find a way to make sure that it continues to be valuable to families and to people like us, the blue collar folks out there who work really hard and donate a bunch of money every year because that's just what they want to do instead of taking their kids to Disney World. You know what I mean? Like, it's a challenge. And so, yeah, we'll see where it goes. I mean, it's about to change. A lot of it is about to change. But as you pointed out, and I agree, I do think that they will find a way to make sure that although money is going to be an important part and athletes are going to be compensated in one way or another, it'll still be college athletics somehow.
I think so.
And we'll still know that.
Yeah, I think so. I want to believe that. So at least my desire to believe that keeps me sane, for the lack of a better word, at this point, not fearing the doomsday scenario that I know is being felt, not just by some of my buddies, but I know it's being felt by a lot of folks who are going to scream it from the rooftops. This is collegiate athletics. There's no reason to be paying them. They're getting their scholarship. Everything we've heard forever, this is going to dramatically change and everything will be for the worse. I don't allow myself to go down that road for this and for most other things. So I'm more on the let's see how this shakes out. There's still so much we don't know.
Yeah. There's a lot that we don't know. There's no doubt. Darren Heitner does know, though, and he's going to join us. Is he 130 or 135?
He's 130.
Okay, 130. So a couple of minutes, and we'll hit a timeout and get to Darren Heitner with Heitner Legal, one of the great sports law attorneys we have here in the United States, who has literally been inside of all of this for the last few months, last couple of years, as a matter of fact, as it has continued to evolve. On the baseball front, yesterday started the sticky era, I guess, or the monitoring of the sticky era. I did see them go out and check Jacob deGrom, not because he was doing anything wrong, but they're doing these random checks, and he was, of course, all good, and he was, of course, really good once again. I don't know that I don't know I've seen anything like this in my lifetime. What he's doing, it is just ridiculous. His ERA is 0.5. It's June. They started playing in April. It is 0.5. He's given up 4 earned runs all year. That's it. 4. Can you believe it? Darren, think about this. This is where baseball fails. Because if insert quarterback wherever you want to, Aaron Rodgers was completing 94% of his passes, that would be the only thing that you hear and see on TV every day.
Mm-hmm.
And I get it. We hear a lot about Jacob deGrom, but not enough. Nobody is doing a good job of putting this into historical perspective. That includes guys like us. I mean, this is really, truly unbelievable. These are the best hitters ever in the world. And he is giving up 4 earned runs in 3 months.
And he's driven in 6. I will say that I think the folks who do cover baseball, a lot of the national folks and the local folks, I spend the majority of my nights watching baseball in some form or fashion, professional baseball. So I hear about it all the time. And what he's doing, I liked, there were multiple tweets out there last night, like, bad news, hitters, deGrom's not cheating. No. And it's true. This is his 12th straight start, giving up 1 or fewer, which would be 0 runs. 12 in a row. That passes a guy named Bob Gibson. The names he's ticking off the list, the guys that he's passing, I think he's got a streak. I think it's 30 consecutive scoreless innings now. You watch him throw, he's untouchable. The other thing that's boggling the mind, you want to compare to quarterbacks? Comparing him to Tom Brady in one sense is a good comparison because they're getting better as they age. His fastball has increased in his average velocity every year from when he was 28 to when he's 33 right now. When he was 28, I want to say it was like 93. It was 93.5 miles an hour. Now it's at 99. 5 years later when he's 33 years old, and he's not cheating.
Yeah. You can continue to just roll out these amazing stats, and you can't believe it until you actually go look at it. He turned 33, by the way, 3 days ago. And what I find really incredible about his career, he has a career 2.49 earned run average. It hasn't been over as a matter of fact, it hadn't been over 2.43 since 2017 when it was a whopping 3.5. But it was 1.7 in 18, 2.43, 2.38 in the shortened year last year, 0.5 this year. So a career 2.49 earned run average ever. He only has 77 wins. That is 39% of the games he's started. Just 77 wins. The Mets have royally failed him in his career. I mean, they've come around a little bit here lately, but for the longest time, he's 7-2 this year, but for the longest time, like that year that he had the 1.7 ERA in 2018, he went 10-9. That's ridiculous. Like he should have been like 18-4.
Yeah, they're finally giving him the support that he actually deserves. It used to be when I could joke with my Met fan friends, like, deGrom's going, I bet he's going to shut us down and we're going to win it in the 8th or win it in the 9th. And it was largely believable. I mean, I genuinely believe that. Okay, deGrom's going, which means we're not going to get a hit for a while, but then we'll win the game in the end because the Mets aren't going to get a hit. That's the way it goes. It's not like that anymore.
As you mentioned, the Braves and the Mets did split yesterday. Nobody tossed last night for the sticky stuff. So we'll continue to keep our eyes on Major League Baseball. Power Hour, powered by Wando Power Equipment. It is time for a timeout. When we return, Darren Heitner will join us. You'll want to hear this. If you don't know what's going on as it pertains to NIL and the Supreme Court ruling yesterday in the Alston versus NCAA case, He will tell you in very simple terms. You're going to really like and enjoy this conversation. So hang tight. The JB and Goldwater Show, driven by Stokes Volkswagen. We'll be right back.
This is Mike Mazzell for Stokes Volkswagen on Ashley Phosphate Road with exciting news. It's springtime and we're playing ball. Most dealerships don't have any inventory, but at Stokes Volkswagen we do. So we're playing ball on every new Volkswagen in stock. Every new Volkswagen available with zero down. Qualified buyers can sign and drive with interest-free financing for 60 months. Remember, Stokes Volkswagen on Ashley Phosphate Road is the fastest, easiest way to sell your car and get the most money for your trade. Plus, we'll take any trade in any condition, paid off or not. Is your credit in a slump? Strike two! If you've got $500 down and you make at least $2,000 per month, our lenders can get you approved. So if you want to strike out, that's okay. But if you want to hit a home run and save on a new Volkswagen, come see us today at Stokes Volkswagen on Ashley Phosphate Road or StokesVW.com.
$1,666 per month per $1,000 borrowed for 60 months at 0% APR with zero down. Plus tax tag. Includes $499.50 administration fee. Subject to VCI credit approval. Expires month end.
Peace and love at Stokes VW. Wando Power Equipment, the trusted home of Hustler zero-turn residential and commercial mowers. There is nobody more trusted in South Carolina than our friends from Wando Power Equipment. They've been providing elite commercial and residential service for over 30 years. Landscape Services have turned to their selection of Hustler zero-turn mowers like the Raptor. Bigger, stronger, faster, and the most durable Raptor Hustler has ever designed. Located on Daniel Island and online at wandopower.com. Wando Power Equipment, owned by the Price family, the home of Hustler zero-turn mowers, rentals, service, and specializing in family and friendship.
Shrimping season's back. That means local caught shrimp. That's right. Local caught shrimp back on the menu at the Dog and Duck. All three locations, Bell Hall, Park West, and Clements Ferry Road, now featuring once again local caught hand-breaded shrimp, plus other daily specials like the Game Day Burger every Wednesday, Rib Night on Friday, rotating taps all the time, and all the TVs you can possibly imagine for whatever you want to watch. The Dog and Duck in Bell Hall, Park West, and on Clements Ferry Road. Okay, what's going on today, huh? Anything to talk about?
All right, greetings and a good Monday afternoon. Greetings and a good Tuesday afternoon. Greetings and a good Wednesday afternoon, and welcome aboard. All right, greetings and a good Thursday afternoon. Greetings and a good Friday afternoon, and welcome aboard. Final segment, Tuesday afternoon. The JB and Goldwater Show, driven by Stokes Volkswagen. JB and Darren Heitner, that is. Two Darrens don't make a right, is what they say sometimes.
No, we always make a right.
That's very true. It's been a while since we've talked to this gentleman, and he has been quite busy since the last time. Darren Heitner with Heitner Legal, one of the great sports law attorneys, amongst other things, in this country, and fellow SEC brethren. What's up, man?
How you all doing?
Well, we're all spinning our tires, man. We're trying to figure out what's going on in the college sports landscape. Hopefully, you can help us with that.
You're not alone. I think the NCAA right now is trying to figure out what to do on name, image, and likeness.
Yeah, I don't know that they have a single answer, Darren, that is going to be sufficient for about anybody out there. It doesn't appear that way, at least. I know we're on short time, so we'll get right into it with you. Summarize what happened yesterday in your terms in the Alston versus NCAA case. Clearly a 9-0 Supreme Court ruling in favor of Sean Alston and NCAA athletes. So kind of summarize what happened. We'll go from there.
Sure, I'll do my best. You have a majority opinion of 8 justices, and then Justice Kavanaugh with the concurring opinion, and it's 45 pages in length in its entirety. But ultimately, what the majority opinion focused on was that the NCAA is, in fact, and has been in violation of Section 1 of the Sherman Antitrust Act because it agreed to limit how much each school can compensate athletes for academic-related costs. And that the concern was that schools as a whole, with the NCAA as the leader, that they were acting as a cartel and limiting how much that they individually can pay to athletes, to college athletes. And so ultimately what the Supreme Court decided was that the lower court, the lowest court in this effort, it's been about 9 years that this case has been pending, that the injunction that was placed on the NCAA to prevent it from capping what schools can provide to athletes with regard to academic-related costs, that decision was affirmed. And so in essence, there can no longer be caps on things like computer costs and musical equipment if an athlete is involved as a musician, or internship opportunities, study abroad, etc. What I thought was interesting is, to the extent that people are confused, or that the NCAA said it's rather confusing, there was an example used with a Lamborghini, and that this doesn't now allow for a school to provide a Lamborghini to an athlete. The only thing that really is left is this case probably goes back to the district court level to determine in certain circumstances whether or not something is an academic related cost or not. We can get into the concurring opinion by Justice Kavanaugh, and he just goes way outside of academic related costs into whether there should be any restrictions whatsoever on any sort of compensation to athletes. And ultimately, his final line, which I thought was very strong, is the NCAA is not above the law.
Mm-hmm. So what does this mean, like right now, the immediate future, Darren, for colleges and universities across the country?
So again, what it means specifically is that there can no longer be caps on academic related costs. But more broadly, timing is so very important because we have 6 states currently ready to allow athletes within their jurisdictions to benefit from their names, images, and likenesses as of July 1. There are other states that may join in the very near future. And meanwhile, you have the NCAA and many schools in jurisdictions where there has not been a state law enacted, that will be enacted in the near future, wondering what to do. And I think why this specific decision is so important outside of the specifics related to academic related costs is the NCAA has been hoping to get some sort of antitrust exemption. And the highest court in the land shot that down. And so the NCAA has to be really concerned if it now enacts some sort of legislation on its own to allow for name, image, and likeness, but also placing restrictions on it across the country, it's opening up the door to more litigation. Because this would be, again, a concerted effort, collusion in a sense, telling schools what they can and can't do, which trickles down to players. So my thinking is based on this decision, it could actually change the NCAA's game plan, ultimately telling all of the schools, look, we think name, image, and likeness should be a thing. We're not going to get in the way of that, but you, schools, you determine what your policy is going to be with it. You create your own rules and regulations. We don't want to be involved because we don't want to be.
How? Wow. Because, but if state law is in place, though, Darren, those it won't matter for schools that are under state law. State law will take precedent. That is correct, right?
That is 100% correct. No school rule nor NCAA regulation can trump the state law or a federal law, but there is no federal. So in this specific circumstance, to the extent that a state has a law that will be effective July 1, that is going to be the controlling law for the schools within that state.
My question with this, something Darren and I, our Darren, if you'd like, discussed yesterday, Darren, who will monitor this? And okay, so for instance, in this state, South Carolina, state law does not take effect until July 1 of 2022. So if Clemson University and the University of South Carolina both have, I would assume, similar name, image, and likeness policies in place, and somebody breaks a rule, who is that reported to and how is it dealt with?
So it's a good question because right now in your state, there's absolutely no guidance. The NCAA has not done anything just yet. And so under the current bylaws, no athletes within the state of South Carolina would be able to benefit from their names, images, and likenesses. However, the assumption is that between now and July 1, the NCAA will do something, whether it is pass its own legislation or just allow the schools across the country in states that don't have laws to create their own rules and regulations. If in fact that occurs, the latter, most likely it'll be up to the schools to enforce their own rules and regulations. For quite some time, the impression was that the NCAA would actually vote on legislation that it created many months ago. In fact, back in January of this year, the NCAA Division I Council was supposed to have a vote on legislation. It's been sitting there. That legislation initially had what's called a third-party administrator, TPA, that was supposed to be part of this process. Basically, an arm of the NCAA, a national body that would review all of the deals and either approve or deny them. That's been scrapped. That's off the table. In fact, that happened just prior to the Supreme Court decision. But if there was any question whatsoever, that's definitely not happening now. So I think in a circumstance where all schools have these rights, all athletes have these rights, and in those states where there is not a state law, I think it's really going to be up to the individual schools to enforce their regulations.
Wow. Darren Heitner is one of the great ones out there who has been I say covering this. You're an attorney, but you've been doing both over the last what seems like 20 years. Honestly, not to age anybody around here, but this conversation has been had a lot by so many people across the country. So you're in Florida. You understand Florida state law quite well when it comes to name, image, and likeness, which it is set to be official in 9 days, July the 1st. Wow, that's going to be here before long. What do you like? And what do you like and what do you dislike about Florida law? What is something that we could learn from Florida's name, image, and likeness laws?
Well, I'm biased because I helped draft the legislation. So right. I like it all. I think what's really important is athletes need to have the capacity to enjoy representation. We're talking about 18 to 21-year-olds by and large. They have to have counsel, whether it be a lawyer or an agent or otherwise. They need to have a third party, at least having the capacity to help them with regard to procuring and negotiating deals. One thing I really like about our legislation in Florida that you see in some other states, but not all, is we also require some minimum amount of financial literacy and life skills workshops for the athletes. And in Florida, we require it at the beginning of the first year of enrollment and then at the beginning of the third year of enrollment for an athlete. He or she stays that long at the university. I think that's really important. But outside of that, really what I'd like to see and what we've tried to create in Florida is as much of a free market economy as possible. Let the athletes do the deals. Obviously, we want to try to the best of our ability to eliminate any sort of nefarious activity. We don't want an athlete receiving $10 million for one Instagram post. But could a Trevor Lawrence receive $1 million from a large corporate entity in exchange for numerous deliverables? Absolutely. So I'd like to see athletes really be able to benefit from this and have the least amount of restrictions as possible.
Darren, I know we only have maybe a minute or two left with you, and then we'll let you run. You're very kind to lend us some of your time. I'm going to ask a very bold, large question that a lot of folks, I think, are maybe believing that this is where college sports is trending. I just want to get your thoughts, and if you have an opinion on this. Will we ever see salaries in college athletics, maybe even just specific to football and basketball?
I think it's possible. And Justice Kavanaugh even really sort of hinted to it in his concurring opinion, where he went well beyond academic-related costs and wondered whether or not there is the potential for athletes to receive revenues or at least royalties from the universities. And he mentioned that there's definitely complexity with it, including but not limited to whether that will cause non-revenue sports to be extinguished and whether or not there's Title IX concerns. And what he basically said is these are things that don't necessarily have to be resolved in litigation. It can possibly be resolved with legislation, by the way, that Congress at the national level is considering it, or through collective bargaining, which I thought was really interesting. So I think at some point we could actually see college athletes classified as employees. And I think based on the decision yesterday from the Supreme Court, we're definitely at least a little bit closer to that than we were before.
Fantastic. It's fantastic information, Darren. On that note, we will make sure that we let you run, but we wanted to try to hit on at least as much as we could. I know we've kind of popped around a little bit on the board, but just to lay the groundwork and try to present some basic facts to the public, because I think a lot of folks are still rather confused as to what is going on and what is coming. I know this, though. If they follow you on Twitter, they won't be, because that's what Darren and I do. We just regurgitate whatever you say. Brilliant work as always. And HeitnerLegal.com, HEITNER is how you would spell Darren's last name, HeitnerLegal.com. Just so much wonderful information out there. You're a professor as well, just incredibly well-rounded. Thank you for your time and for your information. We really appreciate it. We'd love to speak to you again here pretty soon.
Thank you. Be well.
See you, man.
Yes, sir. There you go. Darren Heitner down in Florida. As he mentioned, he did help draft legislation for name, image, and likeness in the Sunshine State, and that is set to go in 9 days. So what I found interesting, Darren, was he, after about one question, immediately went right to name, image, and likeness, which this basically what that told me was, yes, the Alston case was a major ruling and a major win for college athletes as it pertains to education-related expenses. But at the end of the day, actually what it really did was it kept the door open for more change in the future litigation, were his exact words, his exact term used there, because it was a unanimous 9-0 ruling in favor of Sean Alston and the athletes. Now what they're looking at in the future is, if there is, and there is currently, and there will be more future litigation cases that move themselves through the court system, athletes have a real leg to stand on, as opposed to the NCAA and what they've brought forward thus far.
Yeah, and the NIL legislation is of much more top of mind. While the Supreme Court ruling came down yesterday and is immediately applicable to garnering any type of academic related, however you would like to put it, academic related materials or any type of funding for academic related stuff. Well, that's now immediately on the table. What is a more pressing concern now, as of right now, is the NIL and what happens on July 1. And what the NCAA will do based on this ruling. Will they now say, will they adopt something along the lines of what was presented? At least it became public yesterday, with 6 conferences, including the SEC, drafting an alternate proposal that basically said, schools handle it yourself. It can't be pay for play, and it can't be boosters involved, but handle it yourself. And his sense, Darren's, not mine, is that is where this is going. He also said one of the things he likes about the Florida law is the free market value. That is something that I like. That is something that terrifies a lot of people with NIL, because how does that change? My market value in Jacksonville, Florida is not the same as my market value in New York or in LA.
Yeah.
Social media wise, it can be and is. But from a market value, there are differences. So while he likes that about Florida, while I like that, there are lots of opposing views about that. And the other thing that struck me, and I think we agreed ever since the ruling came down yesterday, where are we going? At some point, could we see athletes being titled as employers or employees of a school? It's possible. And I think at some point we'll get there. How? Will it be salaries? I don't know. But at some point, I think we're going to get there based on yesterday. So it's still a lot to peel around this onion.
Yeah, it's you could have the conversation for a week straight, literally 24 hours a day for a week straight, and not probably address all that's in it. I think that oftentimes I have found when many folks out there have conversations about name, image, and likeness, they think about it strictly from the standpoint of revenue sports, specifically to football. And then obviously they talk about, or even salaries, basketball and things like that. And so, but I think what we need to be careful here, you have pro sports and then you have college sports, but let's remember college sports are under one umbrella at each institution. The University of South Carolina is not the University of South Carolina football team. They're the University of South Carolina with 20 sports. The Chicago Bears are the Chicago Bears, period, the end. The Washington Mystics are the Washington Mystics. And so when we have these conversations, this is what the NCAA has fought. They do have – the NCAA hasn't, I don't think, done a good enough job, but they have a great point in some of this. All right, if we're talking about name, image, and likeness, I agree with fair market value because it's going to be different in Columbia, South Carolina from Oxford, Mississippi, from LA. Like those are all going to be different from a local standpoint. But as he mentioned, Nike could ask Trevor Lawrence to wear a t-shirt and pay him $1 million and hop on Instagram. If that's what the market value is for Trevor Lawrence, and that's what it is. That also, though, could be the same for the College of Charleston women's golf star. It for whatever reasons, you don't know. I don't know why. She could be beautiful. She could be the best women's golfer in the country. Everybody has their own reasons as to why that might be. And so I think when it comes to name, image, and likeness, if it's coming, so you have to accept it. So what is fair? Like, I wouldn't want somebody to tell me, well, you're not worth it. I'd say, well, my fair market value says that I am, so pay me that, period. So like I think that's an important, I think you agree, I agree, we all agree with everybody on that. Like that's important. When it comes to salaries, that's what makes me nervous because how do you pay it? And I don't know as much money as these schools bring in. And I know they bring in a lot of money. Don't get me wrong. I get it. I understand that. We have other things that need to be addressed before that. Like baseball and softball don't have full scholarships. Why not? Wait a second here. You know what I'm talking about? Like why? Don't we need to address that and then get to and not just that. I mean, there's other issues. I'm just bringing up things that have bugged me for a long time. And then you're going to pay a salary to the football players, and then you've got Title IX. Title IX is a law, and it has been for a long time. The volleyball chicks are going to say, well, now, wait a second here. We want equal pay, right? So you're going to get into a deep, dark rabbit hole that I don't think you want to go down. Not saying we won't go down that road at some point. We probably will. But these are just surface thoughts as it stands today.
And what do you want to tackle first? That'll depend on who you are and what your priorities are. You're a baseball guy. You played college baseball. You love the sport of college baseball as much as you do the sport of college football, and the scholarship limit in baseball is a massive issue.
Yeah.
If you ask around the country what needs to be done first, what's happening first needs to be done first. That's some of the reason why it's unfolding this way. I don't think there's any way that if athletes are employees of a school, there's no way you can adequately balance what a football team is going to get and what your rowing team is going to get, because it's also important to remember, like, one sport on campus is actually making your school money. So if my employees are not making me money, then I don't need to pay them as much because they're costing me money. So does this split apart? Does this fracture what we know and become a football thing and an everything else thing?
Yeah.
And I think it's possible. And you mentioned the social media thing. I'll circle back to that because I bring this up all the time. I don't think it's generally discussed enough, especially amongst like water cooler talk and, my buddies when we're sitting around and this conversation comes up. Social media is a massive part of this NIL thing. That's where you're going to see a lot of different avenues, people, races, genders, be able to capitalize on an equal type of footing. Dan Patrick Show referenced it today. Paige Beckers, UConn star. Granted, she's a star on one of the best teams year in and year out. She has 800,000 followers on Instagram. One post is worth a lot of money. Yeah. Athletes have it right now. Celebrities have it right now. You're paid for one Michelob Ultra post, for one post about anything. You are paid based on your following. How many eyeballs are going to see that? The social media aspect of this is massive, and I think that's where the majority of athletes will capitalize.
I totally agree. I totally agree with that. And by the way, as a side note, but as it pertains to baseball, I mean, I don't know maybe none of the coaches that are in Omaha right now, care to put this on their plate, because I get it. They're worried about winning the World Series, but the SCOTUS ruling just came down yesterday. Name, image, and likeness is set to go in 9 days across the country, and the College World Series is happening every night on ESPN. Somebody stand up and say something. Literally, somebody. Well, hey, I know you might not want to do it, but when they do that little third inning dugout interview tonight, maybe Chris Lamonis, instead of answering a question about his starting pitcher, say, hey, you know what? Instead of worried about paying everybody else, how about get my guys on scholarship, because they're paying their way to be here in Omaha and stand on the grandest stage of them all, the College World Series. Our guys are paying to come to school and then to go do this. Like, let's talk about it. Somebody bring it up. I mean, this is the best time to bring, we have these this is common knowledge to people like you and I.
Mm-hmm.
We know it. We talk about it all the time. We're baseball guys. You know how many people in this country have no idea that there's only 11.7 scholarships in college baseball? 90% of the country doesn't realize that, or more. And, somebody stand up, say something.
It would get traction. It would get a lot of traction if it
absolutely
happened. Just like when Dan McDonald, Louisville, basically said, look, through his temper tantrum, saying we need fans in the stands. It made national news. And then guess what? Louisville had fans in the stands like hours later.
Literally the next day.
So it will make news if a coach does that on this stage. He may have a higher up telling him, don't you dare, don't do this, but it would make a lot of news if someone did.
Absolutely. Yeah. I know we kind of got off track with that, but if you're going to do it, now's the time to do it. Stand up and shout from the rooftops while you're on the grandest stage of them all in that sport, college baseball. But really great stuff from Darren Heitner. I mean, I didn't really want to get too in the weeds there, Darren. I kind of wanted to paint it with a broad brush, because I think people just need to know kind of the facts.
Yep.
There you go. You've got the facts now, and we'll see where it all goes. He did bring up something that it was interesting. We'll talk more about it tomorrow. We do have J.C. Sherbert tomorrow, but how many schools will toy with that? All our guys need cars to get to class. They all need golf carts. You know what I mean? Like, how are you going to justify some education-related expenses? I mean, look, we know what education-related expenses are. Everybody knows.
Mm-hmm.
So, who's the first guy that's, who's the first school that's going to offer a botany class in Miami? And you got to go to botany lab this week, so we fly our football team down there every Wednesday from Clemson to go take their botany course on the beach, and then we fly them back. I'm just saying.
And that whole academic achievement awards that they can give out and monetary. So what type of awards are we talking? Like Dean's List or best offensive line GPA? And congratulations, you're the 5th best GPA on the offensive line. That's your award.
That's right.
Reward for that award. I don't know how you police that or police all of it. And that's one of the biggest questions that's out there. How do you police it? They can't police themselves right now. How do you police this?
I don't know.
I
don't know. I do know this, though. It is National Onion Rings Day on the handy dandy National Days calendar. It's also National Chocolate Eclair Day.
Oh, okay. I wouldn't recommend them together. Maybe you get onion rings at Dog and Duck with tomorrow's game day burger if you wanted, or the shrimp. You get a whole bunch of fried thing and then get a chocolate eclair on the back end. You can do that, but not together.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Well, maybe. I don't know. But it is National Onion Rings Day, so take that for what it's worth.
They're very, 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 very good at Dog and Duck.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of onion rings from Dog and Duck. You get them in the what is that? What's that platter called?
Doggy daycare, I believe. Everything they fry, you get a little bit of everything. One big platter.
Yeah.
And then don't die.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of that. All right. We're out of time. Thanks to Darren Heitner and Hale McGranahan for joining us today. J.C. Sherbert tomorrow. Plus, Darren and I will be back as well.
Yes, we will.
Hope you stay dry out there. It is wet across the state of South Carolina. And till then, thank you for joining us. JB and Goldwater Show returns at noon tomorrow. And we'll see you then. Bye-bye.